I seek refuge with God from Satan the outcast. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. Peace, blessings, and mercy of God be upon you. Welcome to another common sense lesson from the Quran. In this lesson, we will discuss what was revealed in the Quran about those having free will, including the angels, the Holy Spirit, Gabriel, Michael, and other creations of God. We begin with the angels, Gabriel and Michael. I have found that the Muslims' concept of angels, Gabriel, and Michael holds several similarities to that of the people of the book, namely the Jews and Christians. This is obviously due to the teachings of the three faiths having the same source, which is God the Unseen. Some of the followers of all three faiths believe that the angels, Gabriel and Michael, are created from a type of light. Yet, nowhere in the scriptures of the people of the book, nor in the Quran have I found where God has revealed the composition of the angels. That is, of what they are created. In the Quran, God mentioned the composition of men and jinn several times. As God chose to make the existence of the angels, Gabriel, and Michael known to mankind but has not revealed their compositions, their compositions should not be taken as a matter of importance. As for their existence and purposes for being, that should be taken with great importance. God's mentioning the angels is an honor to them that should be recognized. After all, if God mentioned you or your name, wouldn't you be honored? Of course, you would, unless God was mentioning you or your name negatively. Even when you read the Quran and God mentions the Muslims and believers, you probably feel a sense of honor. As for the angels, if you want to believe they are made of a type of light, God has given you free will to believe as you wish. No one has a right to deny you. Disagree? Yes. Deny? No. For many believing Muslims, angels having no free wills has become a common belief. As a statement associated with faith, this belief is picked up and circulated as casually and carefreely as the breaths we take daily. This belief has existed for times well beyond my knowledge, life, and days as a believer in what has been revealed in the Quran. Unfortunately, according to what God has revealed in the Quran, this misconception and misrepresentation of his angels are far from factual. And as for those who might wonder, is this really that important a matter? My question would be, is anything concerning God, his religious way, and what he has revealed in the Quran not a matter of importance? Of course it is, as God has made it clear that believing Muslims should not be propagating that which they do not know. In chapter 24, the light, verse 15, we read,
"When you were propagating it with your tongues and uttering with your mouths that whereof you had no knowledge, you counted it a little thing, while with Allah it was very great."
Though some would say that the verse is incident-specific, I ask, can you justify committing such an act against God's angels? Of course you cannot, because it was an act of false witnessing, lying, or witnessing without knowing something. As not to be confused about free will, we should first define what it actually is. If we are to use a definition similar to what is given in most dictionaries, encyclopedias, scholarly interpretations, or even how the average person of sound mind would classify free will, we might come up with an explanation or definition similar to the following. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary,
free will, as a noun, is the ability to choose how to act, the ability to make choices that are not controlled by fate or God.
That was a summary definition of free will. Next, let us try a more detailed definition of free will. According to Wikipedia,
free will is the capacity of agents to choose between different possible courses of action unrestrained. Free will is closely linked to the concepts of moral responsibility, praise, liability, sin, and other judgments which apply only to actions that are freely chosen. It is also connected with the concepts of advice, persuasion, deliberation, and prohibition. Traditionally, only actions that are freely willed are seen as deserving credit or blame. Whether free will exists, what it is, and the implications of whether it exists or not, are some of the longest-running debates in philosophy and religion. Some conceive of free will as the right to act outside of external influences or wishes.
If we can agree that we are satisfied with the definitions just read, the next step is to read what God has revealed in the Quran concerning his angels. After doing so and applying careful consideration, we will discover that though we might be able to question the range, limit, or capacity of the angels' free wills, or that we might even be able to question how many angels possess free wills. We cannot deny that there are angels that possess free wills. In fact, I haven't found one statement in the Quran that denies their free wills. If you have, please feel free to share it with us. I believe that as the angels are a category of creation, like mankind and the jinn, if one has free will, all have free wills.
Proof of angelic free will using the Quran.
First, I offer proof of angelic free will using the Quran, as I prefer to use the Quran as the absolute authority by which I measure all other Islamic books, writings, and teachings. Let us first consider the following verse while keeping in mind the definition of free will, as previously defined. In the Quran, chapter 2, the cow, verse 15, we read,
And when your Lord said to the angels, Verily, I am going to place generations after generations on earth. They said, Will you place therein those who will make mischief therein and shed blood, while we glorify you with praises and thanks and sanctify you? He said, I know that which you do not know.
In the verse just read, God tells the angels that he is going to do something.
Verily, I am going to place generations after generations on earth.
In response, the angels not only questioned God's intentions, but also produced a counter-argument in conclusion that God's intention and action might bring about negative results.
Will you place therein those who will make mischief therein and shed blood?
The angels' response to God requires using discernment in consideration of outcomes to draw their conclusion and present it to God. The angels also close their argument with a comparative, discriminating, and prideful conclusion regarding their reverence of him.
While we glorify you with praises and thanks and sanctify you.
This clearly shows that the angels disagreed with God and voiced their disagreement to him, as they were suggesting that God consider the different sides and outcomes of the matter he'd decided upon. This suggests that their doubts about what God was going to do generated their need for answers, reconsideration, or reassurance. How they replied to God's decision indicates that before putting forth their reservations, the angels thought the matter through. What was there to think about or counter if they had no free will? No free will, like compulsion, could only produce acceptance. God, obviously aware of their uneasiness, responded to the angels' objections.
He said, I know that which you do not know.
God's assurance to them that he knew what he was doing may have fallen short of comforting the angels, but that he responded indicates that God wanted to prove something to the angels. I don't know what that something is, as God has not made that clear. But perhaps I can prove that there was an issue after we have read the following 2 Quranic verses. Before we move on to those verses, please use your common sense-based reasoning and consider this. In the verse we have just read, had God been asking the angels, should he create mankind? They may have been obliged or compelled to answer him, but God wasn't asking them, he was telling them what he was going to do. My point is this, in the absence of free will, the angels would only have had the ability to agree without consideration or question because the lack of free will would mean the absence of the ability to do anything other than agree. In the Quran, chapter 2, the cow, verses 31 to 33, we read,
And he taught Adam the names, all of them. Then he showed them to the angels and said, Inform me of the names of these, if you are truthful. They said, Exalted are you, we have no knowledge except what you have taught us. Indeed, it is you who is the knowing, the wise. He said, O Adam, inform them of their names. And when he had informed them of their names, he said, Did I not tell you that I know the unseen of the heavens and the earth, and I know what you reveal and what you have concealed?
In the verses we have just read, God did not just tell the angels to do something.
Inform me of the names of these.
In addition, God gave the angels under the condition of choice.
If you are truthful.
The condition, especially the if, signifies the ability to decide, to compare, to reason, and so on. For example, if I do this, I can expect that, or in the case of the angels, if you are going to be truthful or dishonest. The angels conceded due to their limitations in knowledge.
Exalted are you, we have no knowledge except what you have taught us. Indeed, it is you who is the knowing, the wise.
At this time, God confirms his answer to the question the angels asked before Adam's creation.
He said, Did I not tell you that I know the unseen of the heavens and the earth, and I know what you reveal and what you have concealed?
As God is not random, the entire incident hints at something occurring before God informing the angels of his intention to create Adam. Also, as God told the angels,
I know what you reveal and what you have concealed.
It is just another statement that denotes the free will of the angels unless you believe that God commanded them to try to conceal something from him. This is what I was referring to when I mentioned there being an issue. We also read, in the Quran, chapter 2, the cow, verse 34.
And when we said to the angels, prostrate yourselves before Adam, and they prostrated except Iblis. He refused and was proud and was one of the disbelievers.
In the verse we have just read, God has revealed that he told the angels,
prostrate yourselves before Adam, and they prostrated except Iblis.
Considering that the Quran was revealed for the sense and reasoning abilities of mankind, the question is, why would God say that I told them to do something, and they did it except one? In other words, God revealed that only one refused to do what I commanded. Though we may know there is a difference between the jinn and angels, in the verse just read, God made no distinction between the nature of those he commanded to prostrate. As angels are the subject mentioned as being obedient, the implication is that they had the same ability to refuse the command and act in disobedience. The point of God's lesson in chapter 2, verse 34, is obviously obedience as opposed to disobedience. This clearly suggests that the angels had the ability to refuse the command of God, but they didn't due to their obedience and not the absence of free will. The absence of free will equals the absence of obedience.
Proof of angelic free will using ahadith.
Though many believing Muslims would disagree with me as to angels and several of God's creations having free wills, they would readily quote and accept the following ahadith.
Ibn Mas'ud and other companions of the Prophet said that Allah the Almighty sent Gabriel onto the earth to get him clay therefrom. The earth said, I seek refuge in Allah from your decreasing my quantity, or disfiguring me. So, Gabriel returned and did not take anything, and he said, My Lord, the land sought refuge in you, and it was granted. So, Allah sent Michael for the same purpose, and the land sought refuge with Allah, and it was granted. So, he went back and said to Allah what Gabriel had said before him. Then Allah sent the angel of death, and the land sought refuge in Allah. The angel said, I also seek refuge with Allah from returning without carrying out his command. So, he took clay from the face of the earth and,
according to the hadith we've just read, Gabriel and Michael chose not to do as God commanded. Whether their actions were due to fear or respect is not the point here. The point is that the hadith clearly states that they both disobeyed God's command because the earth decided to seek refuge with God from them carrying out what they were commanded to do by God. Thus, the hadith establishes Gabriel, Michael, and the earth as having free wills, as they all made choices. Some Muslims may also argue that Gabriel and Michael are angels, while others will say that Gabriel and Michael are not considered angels but spirits according to the Quran, in another breath. To these arguments, I say God knows best what they are. My point is that whatever they are not men or jinn. Therefore, their having free wills still applies according to the hadith we have just read. In another hadith, it is said that the angel of death disobeyed God's order. We read,
narrated Abu Huraira, the angel of death was sent to Moses. When he came to Moses, Moses slapped him on the eye. The angel returned to his Lord and said, You have sent me to a slave who does not want to die. Allah said, Return to him and tell him to put his hand on the back of an ox, and for every hair that will come under it, he will be granted 1 year of life. Moses said, O Lord, what will happen after that? Allah replied, Then death. Moses said, Let it come now. Moses then requested Allah to let him die close to the sacred land, so much so that he would be at a distance of a stone's throw from it. Abu Huraira added, Allah's apostle said, If I were there, I would show you his grave below the red sand hill on the side of the road.
According to the hadith we've just read, some might relate the angel of death's disobedience to the high status of Moses in God's eyes. But the point is not Moses' position or status, but whether angels have or do not have free wills. Then again, some might say they are all weak ahadith. To that, I would concede, as I do not take any hadith as being absolutely reliable, regardless of beauty, association, or attribution. And personally, I cannot understand how anyone would even consider Moses beating up a being that can rip your soul from your body. But that's me. You are free to believe as you wish. Angelic obedience to command does not negate free will. The angels have proven to be among God's most devoted servants who possess free wills. Though they may question God's intentions, they do not appear to disobey His commands in the Koran. In the Koran, chapter 66, the Prohibition, verse 6, we read,
O you who believe, ward off from yourselves and your families a fire whose fuel is men and stones, over which are appointed angels stern and severe, who disobey not the commands they receive from Allah, but do that which they are commanded.
Many of us have mistakenly taken the verse just read and those similar as a means of proving that the angels have no free will, when in fact, verses of this kind only prove the angels' obedience to God's command. The same verse also presents the angels as examples of obedience for mankind to follow. God uses His angels in this method of guidance as proof of the ability to be obedient throughout the Koran. In other words, God uses Iblis, Satan, disbelievers, tyrants, and such to present us with examples of what we should not be doing and saying. While God uses His angels, prophets, messengers, and rightly guided figures as examples of what we should be doing and saying or aspire to be doing and saying. Saying that angels have no free will is an insult to God and His angels. By now, it should be clear that the points we are presenting to you are common sense based in relation to what we have read in the Koran. Thus, available to any who would use theirs while putting their faith and trust in God. Now, I would like to clarify why this is not a trivial concern or baseless argument. Relative to what God has revealed in the Koran and guided us to understand. For believing Muslims to say that the angels have no free will may be an insult to God. Here is why. It is a statement connected to the Islamic way. It implies that the only means by which God can attain obedience from His angels is by compulsion, which eliminates the act of obedience. In fact, such a relationship would be akin to the relationship between Prophet King Solomon and the Jinn, who were compelled by God to serve Prophet Solomon or face the punishment of the fire. In the Koran, chapter 34, Sheba, verse 12, we read,
And to Solomon the wind, its morning was a month's, and its afternoon was a month's journey. And we caused a fount of brass to flow for him. And there were jinns that worked in front of him, by the leave of his Lord. And whosoever of them turned aside from our command, we shall cause him to taste of the torment of the blazing fire.
And in the Koran, chapter 34, Sheba, verse 14, we read,
And when we decreed for Solomon death, nothing indicated to the jinn his death except a creature of the earth eating his staff. But when he fell, it became clear to the jinn that if they had known the unseen, they would not have remained in humiliating punishment.
I have not seen anywhere in the Koran or in the life of this world where God, mankind, or the jinn have determined that being compelled against their will was an honored or respected position. Even though God has commanded us to obey Him and accept the Islamic way, believing Muslims are forbidden from compelling others to accept the Islamic way. In the Koran, chapter 2, the cow, verse 256, we read,
There shall be no compulsion in the religion. The right course has become clear from the wrong. So, whoever disbelieves in Taghut and believes in Allah has grasped the most trustworthy handhold with no break in it, and Allah is hearing and knowing.
God knows best that compulsion is a detestable thing. Thus, He makes acceptance of the Islamic way voluntary. Let us return to the topic of the angels. In the Koran, God gives reason to His angels' obedience to Him and often speaks of their devotion, humility, obedience, unwavering worship, and such. God also establishes His companionship with His angels and how anyone who is an enemy to them is an enemy to Him. In the Koran, chapter 13, the thunder, verse 13, we read,
And the thunder glorifies and praises Him, and so do the angels because of His awe. He sends the thunderbolts, and therewith He strikes whom He wills. Yet the disbelievers dispute about Allah, and He is mighty in strength and severe in punishment.
We also find in the Koran that God takes pride in the angels' relationship to Him, to the point of boasting of the angels' obedience and respect. In the Koran, chapter 16, the B, verse 49, we read,
And to Allah prostrate all that is in the heavens and all that is in the earth, of the moving creatures and the angels, and they are not proud.
In the Koran, chapter 21, the Prophets, verse 19, we read,
To Him belongs whosoever is in the heavens and on earth, and those who are near Him are not too proud to worship Him, nor are they weary.
Also, due to their obedience to God, the angels are given a status match by God's messengers, Gabriel and Michael. God has also made those who are enemies to his angels, his messengers, Gabriel and Michael, enemies to him, and has classified such as disbelievers. In the Koran, chapter 2, the cow, verse 98, we read,
Whoever is an enemy to Allah, his angels, his messengers, Gabriel and Michael, then verily Allah is an enemy to the disbelievers.
The angels may also find it insulting for believing Muslims to say that they have no free will, as it implies that the only reason that they are obedient to God is that God is forcing them to be obedient. Thus, the believing Muslim would be saying that the relationship between God and the angels is not based on obedience, honor, love, respect, and such at all, but based on compulsion. This is not to say that the angels do not fear God any less than mankind, and all creation should fear him. The angels know well that God has the power to destroy them and his entire creation, should he wish to do so. What we have just read are a few of God's references regarding his angels. Such references are made to the angels throughout the Quran, covering several aspects of their existence. But mankind, the jinn, and the angels are not the only beings in God's creation that possess free wills.
The free will of the animate and inanimate creation.
God also teaches us that he has bestowed free will on several of his creatures in creation, both animate and seemingly inanimate. The nature, quality, degree, and type of free will God bestows upon his creatures in creation are known to him alone. Still, the angels, the jinn, and mankind are not the only creations possessing free will. According to the Quran, some animals and others within God's creation possess free will and the ability to reason to some extent. In the Quran, chapter 6, the cattle, verse 38, we read,
There is not a moving creature on earth, nor a bird that flies with its two wings, but are communities like you. We have neglected nothing in the book, then unto their Lord they shall be gathered.
In the Quran, chapter 17, the night journey, verse 44, we read,
The seven heavens and the earth and all that is therein glorify him, and there is not a thing but glorifies his praise. But you understand not their glorification. Truly, he is ever forbearing, oft forgiving.
God only knows how much we have in common with the moving and flying communities that are like us, as well as those in the heavens and earth that glorify him. They are signs for us, and God gives us many examples of their abilities to calculate, consider, discern, and defer. This can be realized in the following Quranic verses. In the Quran, chapter 27, the ant, verses 17 through 19, we read,
And there were gathered before Solomon his hosts of jinn and men and birds, and they all were set in battle order, till, when they came to the valley of the ants, one of the ants said, O ants, enter your dwellings, unless Solomon and his hosts crush you while they perceive not. So Solomon smiled, amused at her speech, and said, My Lord, inspire and bestow upon me the power and ability that I may be grateful for your favors which you have bestowed on me and on my parents, and that I may do righteous good deeds that will please you, and admit me by your mercy among your righteous slaves.
In the verses we have just read, God not only reveals the miraculous blessings and abilities he bestowed upon his prophet King Solomon, in that he could hear and understand the speech of the ant, but God also revealed the ant's free will and determining abilities. The ant that gave the warning not only knew who Prophet Solomon was, as it mentioned him by name, but it appears that the other ants knew his name too, as the ant that warned them informed them of whom the source of the threat was by name.
O ants, enter your dwellings, lest Solomon and his hosts crush you.
Let us also consider that the ant that warned also decided on the course of action. It recognized a threat to itself and its community, thus warning them to retreat to their dwellings lest they should meet destruction by Prophet Solomon, whom the ant believed was ignorant of their presence and, therefore, wouldn't perceive the damage and harm that he was about to cause. This is a sign from God that goes beyond the blessings God bestowed upon Prophet Solomon, as it is proof of what God revealed in chapter 27, verses 17 through 19.
There is not a moving creature on earth, nor a bird that flies with its two wings, but are communities like you.
This ant did the same thing that any of us might do if we felt our family or community was in peril but unaware that they were. We would warn them. Something else we can learn from the verses is that ants, and perhaps others in God's creation, are just as conscious of our presence as we are of theirs. They may even know who and what we are, what we do, our names, and more. Though my assumption may seem far-fetched, It is drawn from the same chapter concerning Solomon. In the Koran, chapter 27, the ant, verses 20 through 26, we read,
He inspected the birds and said, What is the matter that I see not the hoopoe? Or is he among the absentees? I will surely punish him with severe torment or slaughter him unless he brings me a clear reason. But the hoopoe stayed not long. He said, I have grasped which you have not grasped, and I have come to you from Sheba with true news. I found a woman ruling over them, and she has been given all things that could be possessed by any ruler of the earth. And she has a great throne. I found her and her people worshipping the sun instead of Allah, and Satan has made their deeds fair seeming to them and has barred them from Allah's way. So they have no guidance that they should worship Allah who brings to light what is hidden in the heavens and the earth, and knows what ye hide and what ye reveal. Allah, none has the right to be worshipped but He, the Lord of the Supreme Throne.
In the verses we have just read, God revealed the free will of the hoopoe, which was a bird that was under Prophet Solomon's command and appeared to have been a scout and an envoy. Prophet Solomon was going to punish or slaughter the hoopoe unless it brought him a clear reason for being absent. Considering that the bird had the ability to provide a clear reason for its absence implies the power of logical judgment, free-willed thinking, and common sense, which would inform it of its error in missing inspection. No Hebrew Israelite, Christian, Muslim or sensible person would ever deny Prophet Solomon's knowledge, wisdom, and just nature. Therefore, if the hoopoe did not have free will, Prophet Solomon would have known it and not put forth the threat.
I will surely punish him with a severe torment or slaughter him unless he brings me a clear reason.
The verses also reveal that the hoopoe returns and provides a clear reason or explanation for why it was absent, and sealed its explanation with the testimony of faith, thereby acknowledging God's supremacy.
Allah, la ilaha illa huwa, the Lord of the Supreme Throne.
If the hoopoe didn't have a free will, it could have simply told Prophet Solomon that it had no choice in the matter of its being late, because it didn't have a free will, and was only doing as it was instinctively compelled to do by God. Such an argument would have easily made Prophet Solomon guilty of an act of injustice if he punished or killed the hoopoe. Also, the hoopoe said that he had come with true news, which suggests the ability to come with false news, or a lie. Having knowledge of the truth and the lie and choosing one over the other indicates determining abilities or discernment, as well as reasoning abilities to make the right decision. This fact is confirmed by Prophet Solomon's response, which follows. In the Quran, chapter 27, the ant, verse 27, we read,
Solomon said, We shall see whether you speak the truth or you are of the liars.
Prophet Solomon's need to establish whether the hoopoe was telling the truth or not is proof of the hoopoe's ability to lie. Naturally, Prophet Solomon knew that God does not command or condone lying unless driven by fear of death. This still supports sound reasoning as to the hoopoe's possessing free will, because if the hoopoe had lied due to the fear of death, it would have lied as a result of it making the decision not to tell the truth so that its life would be spared. Hence, this is another sign of free will. Another example of free will within God's creation is evident in the following verses. In the Quran, chapter 2, the cow, verse 74, we read,
Then, after that, your hearts were hardened and became as stones or even worse in hardness. And indeed, there are stones out of which rivers gush forth, and indeed, there are of them which split asunder so that water flows from them. And indeed, there are of them which fall down for fear of Allah, and Allah is not unaware of what you do.
In the Quran, chapter 33, the combined forces, verse 72, we read,
Truly, we did offer the trust or moral responsibility which Allah has ordained to the heavens and the earth, and the mountains, but they declined to bear it and were afraid of it. But man bore it. Verily, he was unjust and ignorant.
In the verses we have just read, God reveals the free wills of stones, the heavens, the earth, and the mountains. Of the stones, in God stating that, there are of them which fall down for fear of Allah. This implies the stones have free wills, as it offers the counter that they would not fall down if they didn't fear God. If the stones had no free will, they would only fall down by God's command. This is not to say that they don't fall down when commanded to do so, but that is not what is being suggested in the verse. The heavens, earth, and mountains were made an offer which God says they declined, or turned down, or refused. And why? because they were afraid of the responsibilities that came with the offer. This clearly implies the decision not to accept an offer due to concerns, which implies that they all possessed free wills, consideration, and resolve. In closing, I leave you with this. No one likes to be wrong about anything, especially things they have done for a long time. This is mainly because of the shame and humiliation that often accompanies being wrong. But we should not let being wrong and not correcting ourselves when we know that we are wrong cause us to be in God's displeasure. Nor should we let it be the cause of our entering the hellfire, as will be the case of so many on the day of judgment according to the Koran. Whatever shame we might suffer in this life, as a result of self-correction, it cannot compare to the eternal shame and pain we will suffer should we enter that hellfire. May God's peace, blessings, and mercy be upon us all.